Welcome to Day Zero.
Welcome to Day Zero with FOUNDIT. Today, I'm joined with our most recent appointment and partner, who is Anthony Butler.
Howdy.
Mate, welcome. Firstly, the markets you're serving and looking after, both investors, which is obviously across all of Australia, which has been what you've been up to for the last few years, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, Northern Beaches, where you obviously grew up as well. And
Partially.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll go into a little bit behind the scenes of what you're seeing in the buyer's agency world, what is out there, what are the trends, what's emerging.
Mm-hmm.
But to kick us off, let's go back out of the business side and talk about your upbringing. Where did you grow up and all that kind of jazz?
Okay, I'll paint the picture. We'll try and paint the picture without harping on too much. But I grew up in the hills, so didn't grow up on the Northern Beaches, but I grew up in the Hills District, which is, call it 40 minutes away from the beaches.
Mm-hmm.
So first job out of school, before that actually. So I guess my strength, what I used to do, what I used to love doing when I was a kid was sport.
Yeah.
Wasn't necessarily an academic, but sport is what kept me happy, and that gave me a solid group of friends to be with as I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then so left school. My first job out of school, funnily enough, was in a real estate firm. So I was a assistant sales agent in a sales firm. So I did that for about going on 2 years, I reckon, and then sort of decided, don't know if sales agency is the thing for me. I wanted to do something that was a bit more. Well, I wanted to stay in sales, but I don't know, it just wasn't quite for me, and I kind of landed in the corporate world and started in tech sales, and this is when I was probably early 20s.
Yep.
And that sort of kick-started my career in tech sales, essentially, which is what I did for, call it 17 years.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep. And where obviously you met Ben Gaze as well.
Yeah, Gaze and I worked at Apple. So when I say I worked in tech companies, I worked for some of the big boys like an Apple, which is where I met Gaze, and I did maybe 3 or 4 years there, and that was probably 15 years ago. That was the glory days of Apple when they released the iPhone, so it was a really cool time to be there. But yeah, so I worked for some of the big tech guys, like I just said, spent some time working for tech startups, working for agencies, digital agencies that were doing lead gen for some of the big tech companies. So some of my clients were Google, Microsoft, any big tech company that you can think of. Then sort of fast forward to, call it 6 years ago, when I was like, no more corporate world, which is when I jumped ship, and we'll get into what that looked like a bit more, I guess. But yeah, so my background is tech sales, which is essentially what I did for a good 17 years, something like that.
I think the really good thing about those large organizations, after I've spent some time obviously in them as well, after selling Realtor Agent, going into Domain, is the amount of resource they have to be able to give you really great training on customer experience and sales, which is the best breeding ground to take to anywhere.
Mate, so I've that's one of the things, I guess I'm lucky to have worked for some of these companies and worked by virtue of working for some of these big companies who typically hire good people. And I'm not saying that on my behalf, I'm saying that the people that I worked under, a lot of the sales methodologies and the training that I've had over the years has been top notch. And even some of the things that I've learned, not necessarily in sales, like if I think about my time at Apple, thinking about how they just obsessed over brand and obsessed over how they went about their marketing, and the detail, and it was a bit of a pain in the backside sometimes, but they just obsessed. And, that's a big thing I've taken away from working at a company like that. And, as I go on through the list of companies that I've worked for, there's different things that I've learned, but that was a big one. It's just so different to any other company that I've worked with.
And then going full circle, obviously starting into real estate, and then making the decision after big corporate to come full circle, go back into real estate.
That's the term, yeah.
Talk us through that next season.
Yeah, so so when I was in corporate world, I didn't want my boss's job, didn't want my boss's job, and it's a bit of a cliche story, I guess. A lot of people sort of jump ship because they're not feeling inspired, and I guess that was me. I was in that world because it allowed me to live my life, go overseas once a year, live my life in the northern beaches, but it didn't fill my cup, so to speak. And, not very quickly. I guess I was mid-30s when I started thinking, hang on a sec, there's more to life here.
Yeah.
And so I left the corporate world, and at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to maybe start my own business, but what did that look like? That's a pretty broad thing to want to do, right?
Yep.
So I left the corporate world, and I thought, you know what, I'll take 3-4 months off and then get back into something.
Yeah.
And I soon realized that, 2-3 months into it, I was actually burnt out, right? And I didn't realize it at the time. And I needed more time off. And that kind of quickly turned into 12 months off.
Yeah.
And I did a whole bunch of things. I went to Bali. I studied something called positive psychology.
Yeah, cool.
Which was super cool because it was something that was unexpected during this process that I went through to figure out what's next for me. I kind of landed on maybe I'm going to set up my own sales consultancy. I'd been in sales for however long, 17, 18, 19, let's call it 20 years.
Yeah.
Had learned all these different sales methodologies. And I thought, if I can go into, say, early stage startups and implement some of these methodologies into the sales teams, that could be something pretty cool to do.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a management consultant who's in the know, and she said to me, if that's what you want to do, why don't you tack on a qualification, which was this positive psychology qualification.
Cool idea.
And try and insert that into organizations.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's a little bit left field, not what I was thinking, but I'll go and do it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I went and did that qualification. Turns out that is one of the best things I've done for me personally, that I've done in my life. And so I took a lot out of that qualification, which today I still think about in terms of the way I run my life, I guess. And yeah, so in terms of, what direction did I take with my career after that, I decided that, you know what, doing this sales thing is probably still a bit too corporate for me.
Yeah. And
then I thought, you know what, let's get back into real estate. And the whole idea was to grind out for 3, 4, 5 years, a sales career, start from the bottom again and do that on the northern beaches.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was doing my due diligence around getting back into the sales side of things, I discovered buy side. And I quickly remembered when I was back, as a 19, 20, 21-year-old working for this sales agency, thinking back to then when I wanted to run my own agency for a while back then, and I would even draw my logo and sales signs and all this kind of stuff. But I remember thinking, why aren't buyers supported? Yeah. And it was just a very basic thought. I didn't think too much of it. And so when I discovered the buy side and realized, hang on, this is a thing now, I was like, I could be one of 500 sales agents on the northern beaches, or I could be one of, let's call it 30 buyers on the beaches and start my own business. And so that was the sort of catalyst to me planning out how am I actually going to get into this industry, knowing that you can, if you really wanted to, get your qualification, start up your own business. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to learn the ropes, work under someone with the experience and the knowledge, and build myself up slowly. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up working for an agency and yeah, fast forward, here we are now.
Mate, you haven't told me about the positive thinking. We'll definitely have to do like a lunch and learn one take with the rest of the team and get you to do the same thing as well.
There's lots of little nuggets in there for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting. And obviously you're on that journey. You've done your own property investing as well. And then obviously you not only bought in the Northern Beaches, you then took on and started doing mandates where you could partner with buyers agents on other areas, Melbourne, Sydney, regional Victoria, wherever it might be, and be buying for clients to help them. Talk us through a little bit of the transition of how you go about the advisory, because like you were saying, the real estate side is, sell side is represented. What are they represented with? Data, a trained negotiator, a local market expert, and the buyer walks in with a handful of comps and basically makes a lifetime decision around a mortgage and a multi-million-dollar decision, which, as you and I have agreed on many times and spoken about, is it's just fundamentally flawed now. Like, it shouldn't be that way.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Not anymore. We're talking about 50, 60% of household income going towards a mortgage repayment.
For 30 years.
For 30 years. So, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think that one of the awesome things, there was many, but one of the things that attracted us to you is you've got this background, which is the technology side. You understand it. And because you've sold it, but you're a curious person who wants to understand things in a lot more detail than the average Joe. So the technology coupled with the buyer agent service, which is effectively what we're doing, it allows us to be a technology-enabled service as opposed to just a traditional buyer's agency that's kind of the same as Joe Blow down the road as well.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see the landscape at the moment is, and part of this thinking has been formed based off some of the stuff that we've gone through our conversations. But, you know, the whole buyer's agency industry at the moment, when you think about it, it's 60, 70, 80%, whatever the number is, something like that. Most of them are, mum and dad businesses, and they're quite unsophisticated. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just the way it is. And a lot of the buyers agencies are just subscribing to the same property platforms, getting the same information. And again, not saying that's a bad thing, but there's going to become a time when the industry matures, and that might be happening right now. And there might be some consolidation, and the people that, or the businesses that are going to survive and thrive are the ones that can show buyers a unique value proposition. And if you're just a run-of-the-mill buyers agency who's still providing a good service, but good and what the next generation might potentially looks like is probably going to be better than just good, right? So, how are these businesses going to thrive or survive in the next sort of five years? And that is what's attracted me to FOUNDIT. At the end of the day, it's this is a next generation buyers agency leveraging all sorts of tech.
And I think you've had the privilege of working for some of these huge global businesses that there's really two levers. You either provide more value or you reduce your price. They're your two levers. And it's a race to the bottom. Exactly. So having things that are sitting in the toolkit that deliver value, when someone's looking at it and going, well, I can go with this person or this person, and I'm getting a list of all these tools versus I'm just getting leverage from a relationship with someone in that market. That is still valuable.
That
always is 100%. And always will be.
Always will be. I think if to differentiate yourself as a buyer's agent in this market right now, I think it's relationship based, as in how long have you been working in a particular market? Are you a local specialist, and do you have relationships in that market? Are you a real specialist in that market? And if you don't have that, it might be some technology that you can lean on. Most people don't have the tech to lean on to make up for the fact that maybe they haven't been working in a market for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. And so if there's an agency, and to FOUNDIT, that can enter the market that combines both experience in the market, longevity in a market, as well as unbelievable tech, that's a pretty formidable force, I would have thought.
And a bit of fun.
Total fun.
Yeah. I got two last things for you. One is, I'm curious and I want to know, when you're buying investment properties, whether it's here on the Northern Beaches or wherever, what are the things you're looking at that you identify that makes up a good asset for you to go, that's a property I'm going to put an offer in with my client?
Yeah. Well, I guess if we're talking, I mean, you just mentioned on beaches, but if we're talking across the country, right, it starts from a macro lens. And so when we're talking macro, we're talking infrastructure, we're talking migration, we're talking affordability, we're talking all those sorts of things, right? The big picture. And so what I like to do is funnel down. And so where do we start, right? And so I guess my investment philosophy overall is keep things simple and just buy in the right locations and hold for the long term being 10, 15, 20 years.
Yep.
And so when you're identifying some of those big macro factors, it's often a capital city. So it might be a Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, obviously. But some of those capital cities are becoming unaffordable now.
Yeah.
So then we're moving to like a major regional. It might be a Toowoomba, it might be a Geelong. And we're funneling down all the way through to the region, and then you funnel down to the suburb, and then you funnel down to the actual asset. And so if we quickly get to the bottom of the funnel part, when we're looking at the asset itself, again, we're just looking for a nice clean block, flat land, easy maintenance, low maintenance on the property itself. A lot of owner-occupier appeal. So at the end of the day, when you're buying an investment property and you're selling it in 10, 15, 20 years' time, perfect world, an owner-occupier is purchasing that property because they're the ones that fight it out over other buyers because it's their dream home and they often pay an extra 10, 20, 30 grand more.
Yep.
Summarizing that, keeping it simple, buy and hold long term. If you can't afford a capital city because, let's face it, becoming unaffordable now, go to a major regional. And then obviously it's about, how do you find the best house in the best streets within those regions?
Well, mate,
suburbs.
Great property tip, and we feel incredibly grateful that you've made the decision to come on board and partner with us.
It's great to be here. Super
Thank
fun.
you, and first of many episodes.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.
Good stuff.